What's going on, guys? My name is Tim Ruswick, and today we've got a little bit of a camera change, right? I've been messing around with some background stuff, with some lighting stuff, with some camera stuff, and some audio stuff, so, forgive me with the change of a bunch of stuff a lot lately. I'm trying to make something that both looks visually great, but also can fit with my timeline. This camera stuff looks great, but I got to make sure that it can, do things as quickly as the webcam can and all that. But on to our topic today. Our topic today is gamification. And ironically, this is something I didn't know existed. For those of you that don't know, gamification is using game design theory and game design practices for software development. Now, I didn't actually know gamification existed. I thought software development and game development were two completely different practices. I thought they were absolutely different, and they actually had conflicting ideologies, right? So you use the same technology to make software and games, but there are some philosophies in game design that are in direct conflict with software. For example, in software, anytime you write a piece of good software, you always want to remove as many barriers as you can. You want to make the task as quick and easy, as painless as possible. Whereas games, sometimes you actually introduce barriers. You make things artificially harder. You add obstacles like enemies and bosses to prevent the player from going where they need to go. And those two things can seem like they're at odds, right? But it turns out that some of those same principles can be used in software development, and you can make better software. You can make fun to use software, right? So it's not just about making good software that does the thing that you need it to do, but it's about making fun software that's fun to use, and software that actually makes you feel interested in using it. So we are actually in a gamification revolution right now. We're in a UX revolution, really, in software. The last 5 or 10 years, we've seen the rise of startups that don't necessarily do something better than their competition, but the way they do it, the way it makes you feel, the way using their software is just so much more friendly and nice and easy to use. And that's a really cool place to be, right? Like, it's no longer about who can do the thing the fastest. It's about who can make this piece of software so cool that people want to use it more than the other guys. So gamification is a really cool thing. And if you develop any kind of software at all, any kind of tool set, anything, gamification is something to be aware about. But it gets even better. Because one of the things that I did when I got back into game development is that I immediately tried to look up everything that I could find about game design theory, like game design principles. Like, what exactly do I do specifically to my game to make it fun? How do I make it fun? What things do I add to it? What things do I take away? I did a ton of research online, and there's not a lot of stuff at all about game design and how to make certain game types fun and how to add specific things. Like, if you look really hard, you can find stuff for specific genres, right? So, like, you can find a post on platformers and how to make platformers fun. You could find a post on, I don't know, top-down tank games or whatever, and you could find a way to make those fun. But what general principles can you find online to apply to your different games? Well, it turns out a lot of game designers aren't business people, and so the game design really comes from a place of art. It comes from a place of creation. But a lot of business people look at these same game design concepts, but they look at them as a way to improve their software and to make more money, which means that the way they document these principles is a lot clearer and a lot more to the point, a lot more specific than the way that some of these artistic guys document their stuff. So when I learned about gamification and I started doing research into it, I realized there was a lot of documentation. You got to find it in the right places, obviously, but there's a lot of specific documentation on game design theory and how to actually design stuff to make it fun in gamification. So I actually learned a lot about game design from gamification, from people that actually apply game design theory to business to make more money. And I always thought that was really, really interesting, right? Because the business world is totally money driven. And a lot of, especially the indie development world, is totally artistically driven. So sometimes it kind of helps them merge the two to make a business out of it and make some extra cash. But two, the documentation is just so much better in gamification. So I think that was really interesting, and I highly recommend that you check out gamification, even if you don't make software, because you can learn a lot of different things about game design just by reading how to actually apply it to software, right? Because most software is boring by default. And if you can make that fun, adding some of those same things to games can really take them off the charts. So some of the basic concepts for gamification, just to give you an idea, this thing called PBL, which stands for points, badges, and leaderboards. And that's like the basic of gamification. And that's what a lot of people do, and some of them do it wrong, right? Like you see bad gamification, it's just it's meaningless stuff. They give you points for random shit, they give you badges for random shit, leaderboards for random things, whatever it is. But if you do that stuff right, you can actually really incentivize your user base. You can really incentivize your player base if you're making a game. So it's important to kind of understand these principles, and I thought since there are not a lot of resources out there in game design, reading up on gamification really kind of helped me tone a little bit of my design aspects and learn a few things. So I thought I would share it with you guys. Since I've learned about all this stuff, since I've actually started designing games, gamification is actually something we do professionally. We incorporate it into some of our software builds, our web applications, or whatever. We've done it in a few apps. It just, doing games, it just comes a lot easier. And two, if if you do freelance stuff, if you build software like I do, think about including gamification in some of the services that you offer, because that can kind of be a hybrid too of getting paid to make games. If you get paid to make software, you can kind of merge the two and maybe make a little money that way. So I just thought I would shed some light on the subject. I haven't heard it talked about a lot, so that's pretty much what I wanted to do, is just kind of let you know it exists and give you a little bit of basics information about it. But that's it for today. That's all I got. Leave your comments below if you ever heard of gamification. If you haven't heard of it, what you think it is, or some of the things that you've learned. I'm always happy to hear what you guys have to say. But once again, I'm Tim Ruswick, and I will see you tomorrow.